I want to start with a question that should worry every single Nigerian planning to vote in 2027, regardless of who you support. If you register with INEC to vote, or if you file to contest an election through INEC, how confident are you that your private personal information stays private? Nollywood actor Emeka Ike, who declared his ambition to contest a House of Representatives seat under the NDC, found out the hard way that the answer for him was not confident at all. Before I go further, I want to be completely transparent with you. The events in this video happened between May 30 and June 16, 2026. This is not breaking news. This is a story that deserves far more attention than it got the first time around, and it connects directly to the trust every single Nigerian is being asked to place with INEC ahead of 2027. Here is what happened. Emeka Ike's private information, the kind of data you submit to INEC specifically to register as a candidate or a voter, ended up in the hands of Lere Olayinka, a media aide to FCT Minister Nyesom Wike. Olayinka then used that private information publicly to attack Ike politically. Emeka Ike did not stay quiet. He filed a 10 billion naira lawsuit against both INEC and Olayinka directly, and in a genuinely rare development for Nigeria, the police actually arrested someone, an INEC official, specifically over the leak. Today, we are going to walk through exactly what happened, what it reveals about whether INEC can actually be trusted with your data before 2027, and why this case, quiet as it has been, deserves to be one of the most important accountability stories heading into the next election. Stay with me. If you are new to the Policy Pulse HQ, this channel connects the dots other channels rush past. Subscribe now. Watch the full breakdown here on this channel. This short only gave you half the story. And stay with me because this story is about your data too, not just Emeka Ike's. Every step from the leak to the arrest. Let us walk through exactly what happened in the order it happened because the sequence itself tells you a great deal. Emeka Ike, the Nollywood actor known for decades of work in the Nigerian film industry, declared his intention to contest a House of Representatives seat under the NDC platform, the same party we have discussed extensively on this channel in relation to Peter Obi and Kwankwaso. As part of that process, Ike, like every Nigerian who registers to vote or files to contest an election, submitted personal information to INEC. That information did not stay confidential. It surfaced in the hands of Lere Olayinka, a well-known media aide to FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, whose political conflicts we have covered extensively in our Fubara Wike coverage on this channel. Olayinka then used Ike's private information publicly in a manner Ike and his legal team characterized as a direct political attack, timed specifically to damage his political ambitions. Emeka Ike's response was swift and formal. He filed a lawsuit seeking 10 billion naira in damages, naming both INEC itself and Lere Olayinka personally as defendants. That is a significant legal move. Naming Nigeria's Electoral Commission directly as a defendant in a data protection case is not something that happens often. And it signals that Ike's legal team believed the institutional failure went beyond Olayinka's individual conduct. What happened next is genuinely unusual for Nigeria. The police did not simply note the complaint and move on. They arrested an actual INEC official specifically in connection with the data leak. That arrest represents formal acknowledgement at the level of Nigerian law enforcement that someone inside INEC's own systems was implicated in this breach, not simply that a rumor or unverified leak had occurred. This entire sequence unfolded within a roughly 2.5-week window from late May through mid-June 2026, and it happened almost entirely outside the major national news cycle, overshadowed by other stories we have covered on this channel during the same period, including the PFIPC scandal developments and the ongoing opposition party legal battles. That relative silence for a story involving a leaked INEC data breach, a 10 billion naira lawsuit against the Electoral Commission itself, and an actual police arrest of an INEC official is itself worth sitting with, especially given everything Nigeria is currently being asked to trust INEC with heading into 2027. This is not really about Emeka Ike. Let us be precise about why this story matters far beyond one Nollywood actor's political ambitions, because I believe that is exactly where most coverage of this case, limited as it was, fell short. Every single Nigerian who registers to vote or who files to contest any election submits personal data to INEC as a mandatory part of that process. Names, addresses, identification numbers, biometric data, and in the case of candidates, often significantly more detailed personal and financial information. That data submission is not optional. It is the price of participation in Nigerian democracy, whether as a voter or a candidate. The implicit promise underlying that mandatory submission is that INEC, as the institution entrusted with that data, will protect it, use it only for its stated electoral purposes, and prevent it from being weaponized by political actors against the very citizens who submitted it in good faith. Emeka Ike's case is a documented instance of that implicit promise being broken. Why the Wike connection matters analytically. Here's the detail that connects this story directly to patterns we have documented extensively on this channel. Lere Olayinka is not simply any Nigerian who happened to access leaked data. He is a media aide to Nyesom Wike, a political figure whose consolidation of influence across multiple fronts, the River State crisis, PDP factional control, and alignment with the Tinubu administration, we have covered in detail. If a media aide connected to one of Nigeria's most consequential political power brokers was able to obtain and weaponize confidential INEC data against an opposition-aligned candidate, that is not simply a story about one bad actor inside INEC systems. It raises a much more serious institutional question: whether political access and influence can translate to privileged, improper access to the Electoral Commission's confidential data infrastructure. That question deserves far more scrutiny than a single arrest of one INEC official can resolve on its own. It is also worth being fair and precise about what we do not yet know. We do not have full public detail on exactly how the data moved from INEC systems into Olayinka's hands, whether through direct insider access, a third-party intermediary, or some other channel entirely. The arrest of an INEC official suggests law enforcement identified at least one point of institutional failure, but a single arrest does not necessarily mean the full extent of how and how easily this kind of breach could happen again has been properly investigated or disclosed. The trust question Nigeria cannot avoid before 2027. Now, let us connect this directly to everything we have covered on this channel about the 2027 election, because this case sits at the intersection of several stories we have already examined in depth. We have discussed the ADC's contested party registration, the NDC's own legal battles over its status, and now Kwankwaso's confirmed written agreement with Peter Obi about succession. Every one of those stories ultimately depends on Nigerians trusting INEC to administer the 2027 election fairly, transparently, and without allowing political access to compromise its core functions. Emeka Ike's case is a direct, documented test of exactly that trust, and it did not go well. Think about the practical implications for anyone considering contesting elective office in 2027, particularly candidates who, like Emeka, are running on opposition platforms against politically connected incumbents or their allies. If your confidential INEC filing data can end up in the hands of a rival political operations media team used specifically to attack you, the calculation of whether to contest office at all becomes riskier, not just in terms of votes and campaign resources, but in terms of personal privacy and security. Why the police arrest is both encouraging and insufficient. Here's why I want you to hold two things simultaneously about this story, because both are genuinely true. The arrest of an INEC official over this leak is a positive development and represents a level of institutional accountability that Nigeria does not always see when confidential government data is compromised. It should be acknowledged as such, rather than dismissed cynically. At the same time, one arrest, in one case, that received minimal national media attention is not the same thing as a systemic fix. Nigeria has no publicly available comprehensive data protection audit of INEC systems that would tell voters and candidates with confidence that the specific vulnerability exploited in Ike's case has actually been closed, rather than simply that one specific individual faced consequences for one specific instance of it. Without that broader institutional accounting, every Nigerian registering to vote or file for office in the run-up to 2027 is doing so with the same underlying uncertainty Emeka Ike had before his own data was compromised. There is also a specific 2027 stakes dimension worth naming directly. As party registration battles continue, as opposition coalitions like the ADC and NDC navigate contested legal status, and as INEC prepares to administer what will likely be one of Nigeria's most closely contested presidential elections in years, the integrity of INEC's data systems is not a peripheral technical concern. It is directly connected to whether candidates across the political spectrum can compete on genuinely equal footing without their confidential filings becoming ammunition for politically connected rivals with privileged access. Drop a comment right now and tell me honestly, does this case make you trust INEC less heading into 2027? And do you think Emeka Ike's 10 billion naira lawsuit will actually hold anyone meaningfully accountable? I want your honest view.
4 signals worth following from here. Here is what is worth watching as this case and its broader implications continue to develop. The first signal is what happens with Emeka Ike's 10 billion naira lawsuit itself, whether it proceeds to a full hearing, whether INEC as an institution is found to bear direct liability alongside Olayinka personally, and what any eventual judgment says about INEC's data protection obligations would set a meaningful precedent for how seriously Nigerian courts treat electoral data breaches going forward. The second signal is whether the arrested INEC official's case proceeds to prosecution and what that prosecution reveals publicly about exactly how the data leak occurred. A full, transparent accounting of the specific vulnerability exploited would be far more valuable to Nigerian voters and candidates than the arrest alone. The third signal is whether INEC as an institution makes any public statement or policy change regarding its data protection practices in response to this case, ahead of the intensified candidate filing and voter registration activity that will accompany the 2027 election cycle. Institutional silence on this specific point, similar to what we observed in our PFIPC coverage, would itself be a significant and telling signal. The fourth signal is whether any other Nigerian candidates, particularly those running against politically connected incumbents or their allies, come forward with similar experiences of data compromise. If Emeka Ike's case turns out to be one documented instance of a broader pattern rather than an isolated incident, that would represent a far more serious threat to the integrity of Nigeria's 2027 electoral process than a single case alone.
Here is where this story leaves us. Between late May and mid-June 2026, a Nollywood actor's confidential INEC filing data was leaked to a media aide of one of Nigeria's most politically influential figures and used against him publicly. He responded with a 10 billion naira lawsuit against INEC and the aide directly. Police arrested an INEC official over the breach, and almost nobody outside those directly involved paid sustained attention. This case deserves more than a quiet footnote in Nigeria's political news cycle. It is a documented, concrete test of whether INEC can be trusted with the confidential data of every single Nigerian who registers to vote or files to contest office, at the exact moment the country is heading into one of its most consequential elections in years. Emeka Ike's lawsuit and the underlying institutional questions it raises deserve to stay in public view, not fade quietly as the news cycle moves on to the next story. Because the next person whose data is compromised in the same way might not have the resources or the platform to file a 10 billion naira lawsuit at all. If this analysis showed you something about INEC's data practices you had not fully considered, share it with one Nigerian planning to vote or contest in 2027. Like this video, subscribe to the Policy Pulse HQ, and tell me in the comments, does this case make you trust INEC less before 2027? I will see you in the next one.